It's been 6 months since I've had the Z8, and there are a few things that's been annoying me about it that I want to talk about in today's video. Before we begin, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links for items to purchase in the description area of each video. For the past 6 months, I've been learning a lot about the Z8 and using all the features that I can learn about the camera for my use case. And most of what I do nowadays is video. Now, just like the FX30, when I first got the camera, first thing I delved into was photos, because that's where I started. I come from a photography background, and the Z8 has a lot of features that's great for photography. If you saw my video about 3 months, 3 countries, when I started to learn this camera, you'll see what I talk about, what I had to learn, and how to get used to utilizing some of these features on the Z8. Yep, the autofocus took a bit of getting used to, partially because, I started using Sony cameras and some things were effortless. I think a lot of us can call Sony cameras like a point and shoot kind of camera. With that in mind, there are some things that I want to bring up that's kind of been bugging me about the Z8. And I have to contrast this with my Sony cameras. Things that I would have kind of expected based upon the price of the camera. And let me start with the first one, because that's been the thing that's been kind of bugging me lately. Cooling. When I was doing my videos about the Z8 when it was coming, and we keep seeing different photos of the camera, I was for sure that they were going to do 2 different bodies, one more for video, one more for photo. So now that we have one body with all the same video codecs in there as the Z9, that is all nice and dandy, right? But it's not going to have that same 2 hour, 5 minutes recording time in all temperatures. It'll do in all modes if you're in the right place. And I've experienced that already with a camera is giving some overheating issues. You saw my last video, I talked about that one. It's a bit annoying. I would have liked to have some kind of cooling on the camera. There's something that I did recall that, I'm not sure if this could play a role in it, but I'll bring it up and I'm gonna check with the guys that work to the camera. I did send the camera in to have it checked out for the the mount ring and the eyelets. Because remember, there's some recalls and my camera had both of these things. My serial number came up that my camera needed to be checked. So I waited a while because I didn't have any issues. Once I couldn't mount the lens, and after that, never had an issue. But I wanted to get it checked out. Did they take the camera apart? I don't know. But it has me wondering, maybe that's why this thing is kind of overheating, if it did go back to work, get up properly. And again, I can't say that they did, and I'm not saying that they did take the camera apart. I don't see the thing in the screws that look like anything has been taken apart, so I can't say that. But it's just kind of odd that, now it seems that you can't handle the heat. And that's one thing that's really bugging me. The next thing that I would have liked them to do is if they had a flip forward screen. That would be useful, not just for vlogging, but as I'm recording right now, I can see myself on the screen on the FX30. I have a bigger screen here because this is a little bit of distance between where I'm sitting and where the camera is actually located. At times when I'm in a smaller space, I can sit very close to the camera. Microphone's right in front of me. I can see the screen. I don't need to set up the external monitor. I'd like to get to a point where I don't have to carry on an external monitor. So there is that. Something I realized when I started utilizing the FX30 the other day that I wish the Nikon had. And it's also something that is on the ZF. And I'm hoping maybe in a firmware update, they can do this. But when you are in manual focus and you turn the focusing dial or focusing ring, these cameras kind of zoom in. So it's like automatic zoom in. Well, the Sony automatically zooms in so you can see what you're working on. You can get it in closer and then focus on it. The ZF, I believe what that does, it has the subject detection that kind of helps you out. And of course, if you want to punch in, you can add another button. Nikon, please make this a feature so that there's a setting in the camera that you can turn on that would allow the camera to just automatically zoom in when you're in manual mode. As soon as you touch the manual focus ring, the camera just zooms in. And this is an example of what I'm talking about. In the Sony camera, you can set the zoom, and you can set it at different levels as far as do you want it to go in at like 200% or really close or not that far in. And then as soon as you turn the ring, boom, it starts zooming in to allow you to focus in. That's very useful when you do minor focus. And you know, now that I have my 40mm here from Voigtlander, I've been utilizing this lens a lot. So I would love to have that feature on this camera. I think it's something that could possibly turn on in a firmware update. So yeah, it's kind of annoying to have to punch in manually. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of spoiled with the Sony cameras, but I think, you know, when I look at the A7R5 and the price of the Z8, they're roughly the same price point. Some of the things I would have kind of expected to be at the same level at least, but they're not there. And the other thing, stabilization. Now, in the early days when I first tested the camera, they looked roughly the same when you don't have any electronic stabilization turned on. I didn't use EVR because of my experience with the Z6. It wasn't something that I found to be very good. So I just kind of avoided it. I tried on the Z8 and I'm getting jittery footage. I mean, it's like micro jitters when you walk in, and sometimes if you're just standing and panning, you just jump in. I'm like, what is this? You know, on the Sony side, they started with the standard stabilization, active stabilization, and there's like a second level of active stabilization. Then they have dynamic active stabilization. And this thing is like gimbal smooth. Come on. The A7R5 didn't have dynamic stabilization, but it had active stabilization. And I'm guessing in a new firmware update, they'll probably come out with that. The other thing that they had was it grabs the gyro information and utilizes that to smooth out the footage for when you walk in. It basically manages those footfalls and so on that I'm getting in the Nikon cameras. Now, walking slow helps, sure. Getting a gimbal would be even better. But today, when we're seeing that Sony and Panasonic are making these things so smooth that they're almost gimbal-like, $4,000 camera, Nikon, come on, step the game up in that one. I'll say this, and I'll show you this footage at the same time. I have utilized the ZF, and I've realized that when I walked around with a camera, the footage didn't look too bad. The footfalls wasn't too heavy inside the camera, and that was without any electronic vibration reduction. I never tested on that camera because something, again, I didn't like. But if any of you guys have utilized it, walking behind the camera, just holding it, walking, and see how it looks, if the EVR works even better, let me know. But on the Z8, it doesn't work very well. The footage here, you're seeing the camera, it's basically giving you a bit of bounce. But what happens when we run it through the DaVinci Resolve stabilization? Oh, yeah, even smoother, right? This is what I expected out of the Z8. Now, I suspect maybe the Z8 is, as I say, is utilizing the same image stabilization system as inside the Z9. But I'm starting to think to myself, guys, this is a newer camera than the Z9. And if you're going to put this kind of stability hardware inside of the ZF, why didn't you include it in the Z8? Or maybe it's there, but you didn't tweak it to that level because you're thinking, hey, most professionals that can afford these cameras, these are the people that are going to buy a gimbal, make movies, and they get the smooth footage out of it. But not everybody who's a professional buys this camera. Today you realize that if you can afford it, you're going to get it. So if it's something you can do in a firmware update, please do that. Those of us who walk around with a camera in the street and want to shoot videos would appreciate it. Another thing that I noticed on my FX30 and the A7R5 that I would like on the camera, and this is not something Nikon is bugging me about, it's something that it doesn't have at all. This is a pre-autofocus setting. And what this does is basically once you turn it on, before you even touch the shutter button, any point in direction, the camera starts to autofocus. How cool is that? It can be done. We know that when you're in video mode, right, the camera is taking care of the autofocus by itself. Imagine now you have this inside photo mode. You just kind of point it there, it kind of starts snapping in on what you're pointing at, and generally it's basically what's in the center of the screen. Before you touch the shutter button, it's focusing. That's a very useful feature because you're almost already there. Now you have to hit the shutter button to kind of confirm the focus, make sure it's good for you. But again, this whole thing that says Sony's point and shoot, this is something that's very useful. You don't realize how it is or how good it is until you've actually used it. And this is why I can say, you know, Sony has an edge by giving you some of these features. And yeah, taking some of the video stuff and then put it on the photo side to make the camera better. I think other camera manufacturers are doing the same. I think Nikon is probably going to do the same. Maybe the Z6 III, the Z8 has some features in there that's pretty similar. You know, there's no setting for it, but who knows if that's coming. But again, $4,000 camera, that should have been in there as a step above the Z9, because there's some things in the Z9 that you're giving to it as a pro level camera that you're not giving to the Z8. Pre-capture, yeah, okay. 120 frames per second, raw, maybe that's gonna come in the Z9H or whatever that is, but we're probably never gonna see that inside the Z8. And I'm not mad about that because that's the pro line. But this one should have some things that really helps out as well. So those are the annoying things that has been bugging me about the Z8. And let me say this, even though I bring these things up as annoying, it's not to bash on Nikon. I would love them to make some changes for sure. The camera works well in most situations. I just think that when you're in a hot climate, it's going to have some issues when it comes to doing video. I've walked out in the street and I've shot photos and I felt the grip get warm and I start shooting videos, and of course this gets warm as well as the back of the camera gets warm. So what I tend to do if I'm walking around and not shooting the video, it starts to get warm, I open the door, pop the card out, you know, blow on it, walk around with it in my hand. Sometimes I even go as far as dropping the battery, just, you know, basically open up spaces in the camera to let it cool down. Is this something that we're supposed to be doing? Nah, but we do what we need to do if you're in a situation where you still need to keep shooting and the camera is getting warm. So in between shooting, I'm taking a break, walking around the street, I let the camera cool down. Because I remember one time I was shooting, I put the camera in my bag, and maybe half an hour later when we went to get something to eat, and I took it out and I was like, oh my God, why is the bag so hot? Didn't let the camera cool off. So that is something that you're gonna have to be aware of. So keep that in mind. If the camera run hot, don't stick in the bag right away, let it cool off. And I blame myself because these days I'm not carrying around any strap on the camera. I just hold it in my hand, stick in my bag. So maybe if I had it out, like I would have it on my neck in the old days, it would cool down even better. Okay, that's what I have for today on this camera. I'll see you guys in the next video.